Andrew Collins, a name of authority in Seattle's education sector, was the principal of a prestigious private school. At the age of 54, he was not only respected for his achievements and reputation at work, but also for his appearance as the perfect and exemplary man. In the eyes of many, Andrew was a steadfast pillar of both the community and his family. However, beneath this glittering facade were conflicts and secrets that few knew about. The Collins family, from an outsider's perspective, seemed to be the ideal model. Margaret, Andrew's wife, was an elegant and graceful woman. She often appeared at charity events and community gatherings with a flawless appearance, always calm and knowing how to care for the family. However, Margaret harbored her own hidden pain and emotional deprivation that she kept deep within. The couple had 3 children, Josh, Emma, and Sarah. Josh, 25, was once the pride of the family, but after failing in his career, he had to move back to live with his parents. The relationship between Josh and Andrew became strained as Andrew relentlessly criticized and pressured Josh to follow his desires. These tensions didn't stop with Josh, but also spread to Emma. Emma, 22, was considered the most outstanding and promising of the children. However, her life was far from easy under the strict control of her father. Andrew constantly interfered in her decisions, from school choices to career paths. This made her feel suffocated, as if imprisoned within her own family. Sarah, 18, the youngest daughter, was about to graduate from high school. She attracted the least attention in the family, but that didn't mean she wasn't under pressure from Andrew. On the morning of May 12, 2018, tragedy struck unexpectedly. Margaret returned home after a short trip to find Andrew's lifeless body in his study. He lay motionless on the floor, his head struck hard with a brass paperweight. The room was in disarray, papers scattered everywhere, but no valuables appeared to be stolen. Margaret, trembling, called the police, her voice shaking with horror. When the police arrived at the scene, Detective Laura Henderson, an experienced investigator, quickly realized that this wasn't a botched robbery as it was made to appear. The room was unusually tidy amidst the chaos. All valuable items remained untouched, with no signs of forced entry. Henderson immediately suspected that this was a murder with a more complex motive than the scene suggested. As she investigated the family's relationships, Henderson uncovered that beneath the perfect exterior, the Collins family harbored many conflicts. Hidden secrets slowly surfaced, and this case would not only lead to the downfall of a family, but also expose the dark corners of a life that everyone believed they had under control. When the investigative team arrived at the scene, Detective Laura Henderson immediately noticed something odd. Andrew's study appeared ransacked, but there was a strange order to the chaos. Valuable items like antique watches and artwork remained in place. There were no signs of forced entry or coercion. This led Henderson to suspect right away this was not simply a failed burglary. Henderson began by interviewing each family member. The first to attract attention was Josh Collins, Andrew's eldest son. Josh had returned to live with his family after his career failure. Many around him knew that the relationship between Josh and Andrew was far from peaceful. Andrew frequently criticized his son for not living up to his expectations, and Josh felt pressured and resentful of his father's control. In particular, there was information that just days before the murder, the two had a heated argument. During the investigation, Henderson uncovered a suspicious detail. Josh had once blackmailed his father. A year earlier, Josh had accidentally discovered that Andrew was having an affair with a young woman named Claire. Claire, aside from being Andrew's mistress, was also the mother of his illegitimate child, a 12-year-old boy named Ethan. Upon learning this secret, Josh demanded money from his father in exchange for his silence. Andrew had initially complied, but recently he decided to stop the payments, no longer wanting to be blackmailed. When summoned, Josh did not seem overly panicked. He admitted to blackmailing his father, but denied any involvement in his death. Josh claimed that on the night Andrew was murdered, he had attended a party with his girlfriend, and there were several witnesses to verify this. After confirming his alibi, the police had no choice but to rule Josh out as the prime suspect, at least in terms of timing. Next, Henderson shifted her investigation to Claire, Andrew's mistress. This extramarital relationship was not just a simple betrayal. It had created numerous conflicts within the Collins family. Claire was a young woman living far from Seattle, but her relationship with Andrew had lasted for many years and eventually led to the birth of Ethan. Claire had expected Andrew to leave his family to live with her, but that never happened. Claire insisted she had no involvement in the murder and had been home with her son the night Andrew was killed. Her alibi was confirmed by neighbors, clearing Claire of any direct involvement. However, this did not reduce the complexity of the case. Detective Henderson began to suspect that Andrew's relationship with Claire could have been the source of tension within the family, leading to other hidden motives. From here, Henderson began focusing her investigation on Margaret, Andrew's wife. During Margaret's interrogation, Henderson couldn't overlook the unusual signs. Margaret, the first to discover her husband's body, initially appeared confused and distraught, but what made Henderson suspicious was the coldness that gradually emerged in her words. Margaret described her relationship with Andrew as stable, but there was no sign of closeness or happiness. When asked whether she knew about her husband's affair, Margaret briefly showed a flash of anger, but quickly regained her composure and denied knowing anything. Subsequent financial investigations into Andrew revealed a shocking truth. Margaret had been secretly withdrawing money from Andrew's accounts for years. These funds were transferred into a foreign bank account that Andrew was completely unaware of. This raised a major question. Could Margaret have planned to kill her husband to keep this financial secret hidden? Though Margaret did not admit to it, Henderson felt that her anger and frustration with Andrew over his affair could have been a catalyst for a murder plot. However, there wasn't enough evidence to immediately charge Margaret, but she remained a suspect requiring further investigation. Gradually, the picture of Andrew Collins's murder became increasingly complex. All the family members seemed to have their own motives, and secrets were slowly being uncovered, creating a tangled web of family tension. Detective Laura Henderson turned her attention to Emma Collins, the middle daughter of the family. Emma, 22, was considered the brightest and most promising of the children. However, her relationship with her father, Andrew Collins, was extremely strained. Behind Emma's quiet demeanor and seemingly perfect exterior lay years of pent-up anger from being tightly controlled by her father. Since she was young, Emma had been forced to live up to Andrew's expectations. He pushed her to pursue business studies, even though Emma's true passion was in the arts. Andrew frequently interfered in her personal life, controlling every decision, from school to her social relationships. Under this constant pressure, Emma gradually felt like a puppet, with no autonomy over her own life. As she grew older, her resentment and anger only intensified. Emma's life spiraled into a crisis when she discovered her father's affair with Claire. The revelation that Andrew had an illegitimate child shattered Emma's image of her father and filled her with rage. She not only felt betrayed by the man she had once idolized, but was also furious that her already unhappy family had to endure this additional betrayal and deception. The already strained relationship between Emma and Andrew worsened, and the two barely communicated with each other. Emma no longer trusted her father and felt trapped in the facade of a perfect family that Andrew had built. These feelings left Emma feeling helpless and pushed her to the edge of her emotional endurance. Her mental state became increasingly unstable, and she began having dark thoughts about how to free herself from Andrew's control. In the weeks leading up to the murder, Emma's psychological instability became more apparent. Friends of hers noted that Emma seemed completely changed. She became quieter, more withdrawn, and quick to anger when her father was mentioned. No one around her suspected that Emma had been formulating a tragic plan in her mind. She wanted to kill her father. On that fateful night, Emma returned home after a long evening, and a fierce argument erupted between her and Andrew. As usual, Andrew berated Emma for her life choices, pressuring her to abandon her meaningless art dreams and pursue the business career he had planned for her. For Emma, this was the breaking point. She could no longer endure her father's demands. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, Emma grabbed the brass paperweight from Andrew's desk and struck him from behind. The blow to the back of the head caused Andrew to collapse to the floor, blood flowing from the wound. Emma stood in shock, staring at her father's lifeless body, realizing that he was dead. A flood of fear, shock, and panic overwhelmed her. Emma hadn't intended to kill her father, but in that moment, she had lost control. After realizing she had killed Andrew, Emma fell into a state of extreme panic. At first, she thought about calling the police, but the fear of being arrested and convicted changed her mind. Emma decided to stage the scene to make the murder look like a failed robbery. She scattered papers, overturned chairs, and threw objects around the office to create a sense of disorder. Then, Emma hurriedly left the scene, hoping the police would believe it was a burglary gone wrong rather than a murder. However, Emma didn't realize that she had left behind many traces. Her fingerprints were found on the paperweight, and the bloodstains on the floor indicated there had been a struggle before Andrew collapsed. This immediately led the police to question the authenticity of the crime scene. When summoned for interrogation, Emma tried to stay calm, but throughout the questioning, Henderson noticed her growing nervousness in every response. With her years of investigative experience, Henderson easily spotted inconsistencies in Emma's statements. Initially, Emma denied any involvement in her father's death, claiming that when she arrived home, he was already dead. However, when Henderson began probing deeper into details such as the timeline of Emma's return home and the traces at the crime scene, Emma started losing control. Under the pressure of Henderson's questions, Emma finally confessed that she had killed her father in an uncontrollable fit of rage. Emma couldn't hold back her emotions as she admitted her crime. She sobbed uncontrollably, stammering that she didn't intend to kill her father, that it was just a moment of losing control. But for Henderson, this no longer mattered. The truth was clear. Emma had taken her father's life. However, the story didn't end there. Henderson sensed that there was another element at play, one that might involve Sarah, Emma's younger sister. After Emma confessed to killing her father, Detective Laura Henderson couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unexplained, especially regarding Sarah Collins, Emma's youngest sister. Throughout the investigation, Sarah had appeared to be an uninvolved outsider, distant from the family's conflicts. Yet, her calm demeanor made Henderson suspicious. Was this 18-year-old girl truly innocent? Sarah had claimed that on the night her father was murdered, she had stayed at a friend's house to study for her final exams. However, as Henderson delved deeper into Sarah's timeline, it didn't align with her testimony. There was a window of time from AM to AM when no one could account for Sarah's whereabouts. This led Henderson to believe that Sarah might have returned home and even witnessed or perhaps participated in the incident. In a second round of questioning, Sarah began to show signs of anxiety. When Henderson pressed her with relentless questions about where she was on the night of the murder, Sarah tried to maintain her composure, but couldn't hide the unease in her eyes. After hours of interrogation, Sarah finally admitted that she had indeed returned home in the early hours of that morning. She had been unable to sleep due to anxiety and decided to come home, but when she arrived, she found Emma standing in the middle of the study, panicked after having killed their father. Sarah recounted that at that moment, Emma was utterly distraught, unsure of what to do. Instead of calling the police, Sarah decided to help her sister. Despite her horror at what Emma had done, Sarah couldn't let her sister bear the burden alone. With this mindset, Sarah helped Emma clean up the crime scene and stage the robbery scenario. Sarah was the one who helped Emma wipe away the blood and rearrange the room to make the murder look like a break in Gone Wrong. However, as Henderson probed further into the details, Sarah's story began to unravel, revealing that she knew more than she had initially let on. Henderson discovered that Sarah wasn't just a witness who had returned home after the crime. She may have known about Emma's plan beforehand. Deleted messages from Sarah's phone were recovered, and the conversations revealed that Sarah had been aware of the tension between Emma and their father long before the murder. Not only that, but some of the messages indicated that Sarah had even suggested to Emma ways to escape their father's control. While these conversations didn't directly point to Sarah orchestrating the murder, they were enough to show that Sarah was fully aware of Emma's mental state and might have encouraged her sister's actions. Though Sarah didn't directly commit the murder, she had become an accomplice in the crime. She not only helped cover up Emma's actions, but also played a role in indirectly pushing Emma toward violence. With this new evidence, Henderson now understood that Sarah was not as innocent as she had appeared from the beginning. With confessions from both Emma and Sarah, Detective Laura Henderson thought the case was close to being solved. However, something still didn't feel quite right. Sarah's statement that she returned home and found Emma distraught after the murder didn't fully align with some of the evidence found at the scene. Henderson realized that several details had not been thoroughly examined, and the truth might be more complicated than what the Collins sisters had confessed. The investigation took a deeper dive into the crime scene evidence, and the forensics team uncovered a clue that had been overlooked. The pattern of blood spatter on the floor indicated there had been a struggle. This led Henderson to doubt Emma's claim that she had attacked Andrew from behind without warning. It seemed that Andrew had fought back before collapsing. Bruises on Andrew's hands also suggested that he had resisted, something Emma hadn't mentioned in her statement. Additionally, Sarah's fingerprints were found on the brass paperweight, the murder weapon. This clearly indicated that Sarah had handled the weapon either before or shortly after the murder. The question now was, had Sarah truly arrived after the crime, or had she been present at the moment Andrew was attacked? Henderson decided to call both Emma and Sarah in for a face-to-face confrontation. This time, she didn't ask general questions but zeroed in on the conflicting details. Henderson pressed Emma to explain Sarah's fingerprints on the paperweight and why the bloodstains on the floor suggested a struggle she hadn't mentioned. Emma, initially trying to remain calm, gradually showed signs of anxiety. She started stumbling over her words and couldn't provide clear explanations for the discrepancies Henderson pointed out. Sensing Emma's unease, Henderson shifted her questioning to Sarah. At first, Sarah continued to stick to her story that she had arrived after Andrew was already dead and helped Emma cover up the crime. But under Henderson's relentless questioning and the mounting evidence, Sarah eventually broke down and confessed the truth. Sarah admitted that she had been present at the scene from the start. In reality, she hadn't just arrived after the murder, but had been there during the entire confrontation. Sarah revealed that she had witnessed Emma and Andrew's intense argument. Seeing her sister pushed to the brink, Sarah, who had long resented her father's control, encouraged Emma to act. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, Emma had struck Andrew with the brass paperweight, and Sarah had stood there, watching everything unfold. But that wasn't the whole story. Sarah hadn't been a passive observer. She had actively participated in the conflict, and when Andrew was struck down by Emma, Sarah had helped stage the crime scene to make the murder look like a robbery. Sarah had even handled the murder weapon, the brass paperweight, to ensure that no trace would directly lead back to Emma. The truth that came to light shocked Henderson. Sarah, the seemingly innocent and naive young girl, had been the one pulling the strings, quietly manipulating the situation and pushing Emma toward murder. Throughout the investigation, Sarah had worked hard to conceal her true role, making everyone believe that she was merely a victim of the tragedy. But now the truth was clear. Sarah was not just an accomplice, but the mastermind who had silently orchestrated the events that led to Andrew's death. When further confronted, Sarah finally admitted that she had harbored a deep-seated hatred for her father. Andrew's excessive control over both sisters' lives had left her feeling trapped and suffocated. Sarah saw in Emma an opportunity to do what she had always wanted, to free herself from Andrew's grip forever. Ultimately, Henderson had enough evidence to charge both Emma and Sarah. Emma was charged with murder, while Sarah was charged with complicity in staging the crime scene. The Collins family case was finally solved, but the dark secrets and complex truths shattered the image of the perfect family they had worked so hard to maintain. With the confessions of both Emma and Sarah, the Collins family case was closed. Emma was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder, while Sarah received a 20-year sentence for being an accomplice and staging the crime scene. The two girls, once considered the pride of the family, now faced the severe consequences of their actions. During the trial, Emma expressed deep remorse. Tears streamed down her face as she confronted the reality of what she had done. Emma admitted that she had never imagined her life would come to this point. Controlled and pushed by her father to a breaking point, she had lost control in that fateful moment. However, Emma's regret could not change the fact that Andrew Collins had lost his life at the hands of his own daughter. Sarah, on the other hand, remained composed and emotionless throughout the trial. She showed little remorse, which left everyone in the courtroom shocked. Sarah had admitted to orchestrating and planning the crime, but she seemed unfazed. This cold demeanor added tension to the trial, as the public wondered, how could a young girl remain so indifferent to her father's death? Margaret Collins, Andrew's wife, was now in a state of complete collapse. She had not only lost her husband, but now had to watch both of her daughters go to prison. Margaret had once hoped that, even though her marriage with Andrew lacked affection, their family could maintain the appearance of perfection. But everything she had tried to protect was now shattered into pieces. Margaret felt abandoned, alone, and lost, with no idea of what to do next as her entire world fell apart. Detective Laura Henderson, having solved the case, also felt a weight on her heart. Though she had uncovered the truth, the feeling that there were no real winners in this case continued to weigh heavily on her mind. The Collins family, once admired, had now become a tragic story. Henderson understood that, sometimes even when justice is served, it cannot heal the wounds it leaves behind. The Seattle community was shaken by what had happened. The Collins family, once a symbol of success and prestige, had now become a cautionary tale for everyone. Local newspapers and TV channels couldn't stop covering the case, with sensational headlines about the family tragedy. The public began asking, how could a seemingly perfect family like the Collinses harbor such terrible conflicts? It made many people reflect on the fact that not everything is as it seems. The social impact of the case went beyond the destruction of one family. It prompted the Seattle community to reflect on family relationships and the importance of resolving conflicts before they turn into tragedy. The Collins family case became a warning to many other families, showing that problems ignored and hidden for too long could eventually lead to unimaginable consequences. The case was over, but the scars it left would never fully heal. The Collins family had been torn apart, and the lives of those left behind would be forever changed. This was not just a murder case, but a lesson on how unresolved secrets and tensions could lead to catastrophe.